Permatex, Loctite, Honda, Toyota, MOPAR, and a bunch of other brands, including even John Deere, all have RTV gasket makers. So the question is, which brand is the best? Well, let's find out. We'll compare the adhesive properties of the gasket makers. We'll see which RTV gasket maker can take the most pressure. Then we're going to do some myth busting regarding how to apply the gasket makers. At a price of $9 for 3.5 ounces or $2.57 per ounce is this Permatex Ultra Grey, designed for rigid torque and high vibration applications. The Permatex is assembled in USA with US and global materials. For best results, surfaces should be clean and dry. I'll use brake parts cleaner to clean the parts to make sure that all the parts are perfectly clean. All the test pieces have been cleaned with brake parts cleaner. I'll trim all the applicator tips so that a 16-penny nail will barely fit. While I'm definitely not going to get it perfect, this will help me apply pretty much the same amount of RTV gasket maker to each of the test pieces. Cut nozzle and apply continuous 1/16 to 1/4 inch bead of silicone to one surface. Assemble parts immediately while silicone is still wet. Finger tighten until material begins to squeeze out around flange. Let dry for 1 hour and then tighten to torque specifications. Okay, spin right at 1 hour. I'll be using a very precise torque wrench to torque each of the nuts to right at 10 inch-pounds of torque. Allow 24 hours to fully cure before filling with fluids and returning to service. Let's move on and prepare the PVC test pieces. I'll also apply very close to 1/2 gram of RTV gasket maker to the PVC end cap. Let's also test the performance characteristics sticking to metal. Let's fill the test cups with RTV gasket maker and then compare the hardness of the different RTVs. I'll apply RTV gasket maker between a couple of washers and we'll use these to test chemical resistance. All the gasket makers should fully cure in 24 hours, but I went ahead and waited 72 hours just to make sure that all of them are fully cured. So let's go ahead and kick off our first test. Let's test the tensile strength first. And the Permatex Ultra Grey came apart at 66.4 pounds on the first test piece. Even after 72 hours, there's an area in the center of the PVC end cap that's not yet cured. The width of the cured area is 5.79 millimeters. And the second piece didn't do quite as well as the first one at 54.2 pounds. And the third test piece performed almost the same as the first at 66.4 pounds. So pretty consistent results for the Permatex. At a price of $9 for 3 ounces or $3 per ounce is this JB Weld Ultimate Grey. The JB Weld is made in USA. Reconnect parts while silicone is wet. Apply even continuous 1/4 inch bead of silicone to one surface area. Surround all bolts with silicone. Hand tighten until silicone begins to squeeze out. Allow drying for 1 hour and then tighten an additional half turn. Silicone will fully cure in 24 hours. And the JB Weld test cup weighs 18.17 grams or about 2 grams less than the Permatex. And the JB Weld gave up sooner than the Permatex at 49.8 pounds on the first test piece. And the JB Weld is still pretty gooey in the middle. And the width of the cured area is 6.26 millimeters or just a little bit more than the Permatex. And the second test piece is almost identical to the first at 49 pounds. The third test piece performed extremely close to the first one at 51.8, so less than 3 pounds of variance for the 3 test pieces. Also the price of $9 for 3 ounces, the same price as the JB Weld, is this Versachem Mega Grey. Resists most liquids including oil, water, and antifreeze. Assembled in USA with US and global materials. Cut nozzle and apply a continuous 1/16 to 1/4 inch bead of silicone to one surface. Assemble parts immediately while silicone is still wet. Finger tighten until materials begin to squeeze out around flange. Let dry for 1 hour, then tighten to torque specifications. Allow 24 hours to fully cure. And the Versachem test cup weighs 21.97 grams, which is very close to the same as the Permatex. And the Versachem is off to a pretty good start at 63.8 pounds or very close to the same as the Permatex. After 72 hours of cure time, there's still a pretty large area that's not yet cured. And the Versachem did even better on the second test piece at 73.6 pounds. 68.6 pounds on the third test piece for an average of 68.7 pounds to move into the lead over the Permatex Ultra Grey. Also the price of $9 for 3 ounces or $3 per ounce is this Pro Seal Grey RTV Silicone Instant Gasket. It's designed to replace cork, felt, paper, rubber, and composite gaskets. The Pro Seal is made in USA. Apply a 1/4 inch to a 16 inch bead to one surface in an unbroken uniform bead. Assemble parts immediately. Finger tighten bolts until material begins to squeeze out around flange. Allow to dry for 1 hour, then retighten. Fully cures in 24 hours. And a Pro Seal weighs 15.78 grams or about 7 grams less than the Permatex and the Versachem. And the Pro Seal performed about the same as the JB Weld on the first test piece at 55.2 pounds. Even though it didn't have as much tensile strength, it's almost completely cured. And the second test piece isn't quite as strong as the first at 44.4 pounds. And the third test piece is almost the same as the second at 45.8 for an overall average of 48.5 pounds. At a price of $9 for 2.7 ounces or $3.33 per ounce is this Loctite Grey. Designed for high torque applications. The Loctite is made in USA. Apply a 1/16 to 1/4 inch bead of silicone continuously to one surface. Assemble parts immediately. Do not squeeze out silicone by over-tightening bolts. Retorque will not be necessary. Silicone dries in 1 hour, fully curing in 24. And the Loctite weighs very close to the same as the Versachem at 21.74 grams. Compared to the competition, the Loctite just doesn't offer as much tensile strength at 39 pounds. There's quite a bit of Loctite on the center of the PVC end cap that's not yet cured. And a second test piece performed almost identical to the first one at 38.4 pounds. And a third test piece is almost the same as the first two at 38 pounds. So very consistent results for the Loctite. At a price of $13 for 3 ounces or $4.33 per ounce is this MOPAR brand. Assembled in USA with US and global materials. The first 5 silicones are gray. Gray RTV is typically designed for high torque applications. Black is typically better designed for oil resistance and flexibility. Red is for high heat, blue is for general purpose, and clear is for aesthetic benefits. I use the word typically quite a bit since there isn't a universal standard and I found a lot of variance when researching the products to test. Apply a single bead to one surface. Assemble and allow to cure. And the MOPAR weighs 20.28 grams. And the MOPAR performed the best yet at 75.6 pounds in the first test piece. There's quite a bit of uncured gasket maker in the center of the PVC end cap. And the second test piece performed very close to the same as the first one at 73.4 pounds. And the third test piece once again proved to be very consistent in performance at 74.6 pounds. So the MOPAR RTV gasket maker has the best tensile strength yet. At a price of $12 for 2.5 ounces or $4.80 per ounce is this Yamalube. The Yamalube 5 is a factory-approved bonding agent formulated to be a tough and elastic liquid gasket for sealing mechanical joint surfaces. The Yamalube is made in Japan. Apply thinly and evenly using a brush or a putty knife. Wait 1 minute, then put 2 surfaces together. Unlike the other products, which are silicone-based RTVs, the Yamalube is an adhesive liquid gasket. It has a very low viscosity and it's runny. And the Yamalube actually melted the plastic cup after about 5 minutes. And the Yamalube has a very low viscosity and it didn't perform well in the first test at only 11.4 pounds. However, the Yamalube did fully cure across the entire surface area of the PVC end cap. On the second test piece, the Yamalube performed almost the same as the first at 10.2 pounds. 12 pounds in the third test piece for an overall average of 11.2 pounds for the Yamalube. At a price of $17 for 3 ounces or $5.67 per ounce is this Permatex Right Stuff. It claims you could return to service in just 1 minute. Assembled in USA with US and global materials. Apply a continuous 1/8 to 1/4 inch bead to one surface. Assemble parts within 5 minutes, tightening to torque specifications. You can return the vehicle to service immediately. And a Permatex Right Stuff weighs 22.17 grams. And a Permatex Right Stuff made it to 58.4 pounds in the first test piece. While there is a section that's not quite cured, it did perform better than some of the other brands. And the Permatex did a little bit better on the second test piece at 65.4 pounds. 56 pounds in the third test piece for an overall average of 59.9 pounds. At a price of $19 for 3 ounces or $6.33 per ounce is this AISIN brand. For use on water pump, oil pan, valve cover, and timing chain cover. Made in USA using globally sourced materials. Cut nozzle to the desired bead size and apply continuous and even bead. Assemble parts within 15 minutes after application. Engine may be started in 1 to 2 hours. Hardens to become rubber-like in 15 to 16 hours. And the AISIN is pretty light at only 15.48 grams. And the AISIN is performing about the same as the Permatex Right Stuff on the first test piece at 58 pounds. The AISIN also performed about the same as the Permatex when it comes to curing. The AISIN performed almost the same on the second test piece at 56.8 pounds. 60.4 pounds in the third test piece for a very consistent performance by the AISIN brand. At a price of $20 for 3 ounces or $6.67 per ounce is this Toyota brand. It's designed specifically for oil pan and camshaft housing. FIPG stands for Formed In Place Gasket. Made in the USA using globally sourced materials. Apply seal packing. Assemble parts within 15 minutes after application. Allow 30 to 60 minutes before driving. Hardens to become rubber-like in 15 to 16 hours. And the Toyota weighs very close to the same as the AISIN at 15.51 grams. And the Toyota gasket maker is outperforming the AISIN gasket maker at 66.8 pounds. And the Toyota is fully cured across the entire area of the PVC end cap. And the Toyota performed even better on the second test piece at 74 pounds. 76 pounds on the third test piece for a very consistent performance by the Toyota brand. At a price of $20 for 3 ounces or $6.67 per ounce is this John Deere brand. For use on valve covers, oil pans, intake manifolds, water pumps, and thermostat housings. The John Deere gasket maker is made in USA. A bead size of 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch is adequate for most applications. As with all silicone sealants, allow product to skin over for approximately 10 to 20 minutes before assembling components. Full cure is in 12 to 24 hours. And the John Deere gasket maker weighs 17.39 grams. And the John Deere RTV gasket maker gave up early at only 33 pounds on the first test piece. Even after 72 hours, there's still a small area that did not fully cure with the John Deere brand. And the second test piece did almost the same as the first at 31.6 pounds. And the third test piece did about the same as the first two at 28.8 pounds for a very consistent performance by the John Deere brand. At a price of $17 for 1.9 ounces or $8.95 per ounce is this Hondabond. Resist oil, water, and most chemicals. Made in USA using globally sourced materials. Apply as thinly and evenly as possible using a brush or putty knife. Wait approximately 1 minute and then join the two surfaces. The surface layer will dry in about 60 minutes and the film sets to a rubber-like consistency in 15 to 16 hours. And the Hondabond weighs 20.93 grams. And the Hondabond is off to the best performance yet at a very impressive 101.2 pounds. While there is a small section that's not cured, it did better than most of the other brands. And the second test piece also performed extremely well at 91.4 pounds. Once again, on the third test piece, the Hondabond did very well at 89 pounds. So the Hondabond moves into a commanding lead over the MOPAR brand. At a price of $24 for 1.69 ounces or $14.20 per ounce is this AC Delco. It claims to be a single component, medium strength, anaerobic sealant that cures when confined between close-fitting metal surfaces. It provides an instant low-pressure seal and can be used with or without pre-cut and pre-formed gaskets. There's no information on the packaging regarding where the AC Delco is made, and the AC Delco is pretty light at 16.91 grams. And the AC Delco claims to cure between close-fitting surfaces, but the AC Delco is very gooey across the entire test piece. If you need a gasket maker with great adhesive and tensile strength properties, the Hondabond came out on top at 93.9 pounds on average. MOPAR finished in second at 74.6, Toyota 72.3, and Versachem 68.7 pounds. Some RTVs cure more efficiently than others, making them a better choice for applications needing a wide coverage area. And the Toyota came out on top, fully curing the test piece. The Pro Seal performed about the same at 11.38 millimeters. Hondabond 8.7 and John Deere 8.37 millimeters. Different brands have different application instructions. Do they really matter? Well, let's find out. Let's make a test piece with just a gasket. I'll also make a test piece with a gasket coated with John Deere Gasket Maker. Let's not wait for the RTV to skin over, and let's just go ahead and apply the product and torque the bolts right away. I'll also use the John Deere Gasket Maker on an oily surface to see if it really matters if the surface is properly cleaned. Let's see if any of the gasket makers can withstand E10 gasoline for 2 hours. We'll check back on this later in the video. Before we kick off our capstone event, the pressure test, let's test the adhesive and the cohesive properties of the gasket makers on plastic to metal. I'll apply a downward force at 5 inches from the metal. And the Permatex let go quickly at 2.4 pounds without much flexing or bending. And the JB Weld seems to have more flexibility and slowly let go at 2.6 pounds. Just like before, the Permatex and the JB Weld did not fully cure in the center of the test pieces even after 72 hours. Just like the JB Weld, the Versachem seems to have pretty good flexibility and made it to 5.2 pounds before slowly letting go. Once again, the Pro Seal just did not demonstrate as much adhesive strength as some of the other brands at 0.8 pounds. Just like the Permatex, the Loctite just doesn't seem to offer as much flexibility and quickly released at 2 pounds. And the MOPAR demonstrated very good flexibility and strength, finally letting go slowly at 4.8 pounds. And the Yamalube let go very quickly at less than a pound. And the Permatex Right Stuff performed very close to the same as the Permatex Ultra Grey, quickly letting go at 2.4 pounds. And the AISIN was very quick to let go at 1.8 pounds. The AISIN is almost fully cured across the entire test area. And the Toyota is a little bit stronger than the AISIN at 2.8 pounds. Unlike the AISIN, the Toyota is fully cured. Unfortunately, the John Deere didn't even make it off of zero before letting go. And the Hondabond performed better than average at 3.6 pounds before letting go. Unfortunately, the AC Delco did not cure, and the AC Delco let go while it was still on zero. So the Versachem came out on top at 5.2 pounds. MOPAR finished in second at 4.8, Hondabond 3.6, and Toyota 2.8 pounds. And now it's time for the capstone test, the pressure test. All of the clamshell test pieces have had 72 hours to cure with the center open to help the curing process. I went ahead and removed the ball and spring from the grease fitting to keep that from interfering with the test results. I'll be pressurizing the test pieces with jack oil, which has about the same viscosity as motor oil that's used in the car engine. Before we begin the pressure test, let's compare the hardness of the gasket makers using a durometer to see if it has any impact on how well the products seal. And a Permatex Ultra Grey forms a pretty hard gasket at 35.5. And the Permatex Ultra Grey held a pretty good seal until it finally gave up at 125 psi. I went ahead and swapped out the 2000 psi gauge for a 1000 just to make it easier to get a precise measurement. And the JB Weld is also a great RTV, but it's not as hard at only 15.5 compared to 35.5 for the Permatex. And the JB Weld made it all the way to 875 psi before blowing off some pressure. Very impressive. And the Versachem is a gray RTV with a hardness of 24 and a tensile strength of 67.8. So not as hard as the Permatex, but harder than the JB Weld. And the Versachem did a great job at 790 psi, which is good enough to move into second place behind the JB Weld. And the Pro Seal is almost as soft as a JB Weld at 17. And the Pro Seal performed good enough to move into second place behind the JB Weld at 820 PSI. And the Loctite has a hardness of 42, which is a little bit harder than the Permatex. And the Loctite lost pressure at 120 PSI. And the MOPAR is pretty soft at 24, and it has very good tensile strength at 74.6, a great combination. And the MOPAR moves into the lead at just over 1,000 PSI. Very impressive. As you can see, the clamshell assembly really began to stretch at around 800 PSI, and the gasket is pushed out. And the Yamalube began leaking very quickly at around 20 PSI. And the Permatex Right Stuff is the hardest gasket maker yet at 43. And the Permatex lost its seal pretty quickly at 135 PSI, or 10 PSI better than the Permatex Ultra Grey. And the AISIN is pretty soft at 18 and has a decent tensile strength at 58.4 pounds. And the AISIN began leaking at 520 PSI before topping out at just over 600 PSI. And the Toyota is pretty soft at 19.5 and has very good tensile strength at 72.3 pounds. And the Toyota made it to 640 PSI before experiencing a massive blowout. And the Hondabond has very good tensile strength at 93 pounds, but it's also very hard at 41. And the Hondabond began losing pressure at 380 PSI. The AC Delco is a gel and is too soft to test with a durometer. And the AC Delco actually did a very good job at 600 PSI. While the John Deere is very soft at only 16, it just doesn't have very good tensile strength at only 31 pounds. And the John Deere experienced a massive leak at only 200 PSI. Let's see if following manufacturer's instructions for applying the RTV gaskets really matters next. Before we do, the MOPAR has the best combination of tensile strength and hardness and did the best on this test at 1010 PSI. JB Weld, Pro Seal, and Versachem also performed extremely well. RTV gasket makers that are soft and have a high tensile strength like the MOPAR outperform the hard RTVs like the Permatex and the Loctite. So does it really matter if you follow the instructions on the packaging? John Deere instructions call for 10 to 20 minutes to allow the product to skin over. On this test piece, I didn't wait for the product to skin over, I just put it together and torqued it down. 200 PSI is the number to beat. And not following the instructions really helped the John Deere gasket maker perform a lot better at nearly 3 times the pressure, 560 PSI. So this test just demonstrated why none of the other manufacturers suggest allowing the gasket maker to skin over. Let's see what happens when the metals are not properly cleaned and we don't wait for the silicone to skin over. Even with the poorly prepared surface, the silicone made it to 220 PSI. Let's see what happens when we just use a gasket. And the clamshell began leaking at 5 PSI. I just didn't do a very good job of cutting the gasket with adequate precision. Let's see if adding a gasket maker to an imperfect gasket will help. And the John Deere gasket maker did help, making it to 30 PSI before springing a leak. I just applied the John Deere RTV to this clamshell less than 5 minutes ago. And the uncured John Deere gasket maker began getting pushed out of the assembly at about 10 PSI. So following the instructions regarding the cure time makes a huge difference. So not waiting for the silicone to skin over was the best option at 560 PSI. However, failing to properly clean the surface did cause a performance drop from 560 PSI to only 220. So very interesting results. While none of the products claim to be resistant to gasoline, let's see how they hold up after 2 hours. And the E10 gasoline destroyed the Permatex Ultra Grey. The JB Weld held up just fine during the 2-hour test. The Versachem also held up just fine during the 2-hour test. Unfortunately, the Pro Seal did not survive the test. And the gasoline destroyed the Loctite. And the MOPAR held up just fine. And the gasoline was just too much for the Yamalube. And the Permatex Right Stuff happens to be the wrong stuff for gasoline exposure. And the gasoline destroyed the AISIN. Unfortunately, the Toyota did not survive the test. And the gasoline destroyed the John Deere. Unfortunately, there's no longer a bond with the Hondabond. And the AC Delco is totally dissolved. So which RTV gasket maker is the best? The MOPAR performed the best with an average finish of 3rd place. Toyota performed well, finishing on average at 3.3 and Hondabond 3.8. One thing I really enjoy about testing products is that I learn so much. Not only do I learn which products are the best, but I learn a lot about how to test products and the different qualities that makes them perform so well. All the videos in this channel, including this one, are viewer suggested. So if you have a video idea, I hope you'll take time to leave a comment. Thanks so much for watching. Please take care, and I look forward to next time.